can beat you. And he said, hey, Vanderbilt being that bottom team, that's hard to believe that they're considered to be the bottom in the SEC, but they've been on a downward trend. This is the 5th year in a row, 3 years of Bryce Drew, Jimmy, now 2 years of Jerry Stackhouse. But look, want to say to everyone listening right now, follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Again, follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. We'll be covering a lot today. College football, recruiting, National Signing Day, part 2. Basically, why bring sand to the beach? Most schools have already filled their recruiting needs. There are schools like Tennessee, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Auburn that had coaching changes. Texas, of course, had a change. Central Florida, because Josh Heupel left to join his athletic director at Tennessee this past Wednesday to be the new football coach for the Volunteers. But again, lots to cover today. We're going to have a lot of really strong content, several great guests as always. And first, I want to say one of our sponsors, they're closed today, Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. If you're going I-40, going to Little Rock, you're coming to Memphis from Little Rock, go north 11 miles to Wynne to Red River Ford Toyota. If you're on Highway 64, back and forth to Heber Springs, half a mile south of Highway 64 in Wynne, across from Jordan's Exxon. They're open Monday through Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I know I talked with Justin Wynn. He was on Sports 56 WHBQ. Sidelines Saturday mornings were on 8 to 10 a.m. Central. He had delivered a vehicle someone had purchased Friday, and he was getting home about 10:30 at night. They go above and beyond the call of duty, their commitment to service. John Dobbs Jr. is a member. He's part of the Red River Auto Group ownership team. You know that Dobbs name. That means quality, commitment. They will have your back when you buy a car, truck, or SUV. Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. Check them out on our website, sidelines.live. Jimmy, hey, we watched a lot of basketball yesterday. I think a lot of people got a little curvature of the spine or whatever, curled up watching all those games, but it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot. SEC held its own. Big 12, really, really strong basketball league. Alabama came up short. Auburn came up short. But Tennessee beat Kansas, and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, it was just an interesting array of games. You had the bazaar taking place before the first jump ball of any of those games yesterday, when it was learned that the Kentucky Texas game was not going to be played. And that was, I thought, a big blow for Kentucky, because they lost a chance to get a victory against the highest ranked team that they'll face for the rest of the regular season. So I think right now, for them to have any chance to get in the tournament, they're going to have to win out. And on top of that, you've got to wonder which conferences are actually going to play a conference tournament this year. And if this is ever a year that Kentucky needed the SEC tournament, it's this year. And we just don't know where everything's going to stand there, because we've had a number of postponements and rescheduled games and so forth. And there seems to be some sentiment building up that maybe the Power 5 conferences might not need to play a tournament, because they want to reduce the chances of any more players testing positive and be exposed to the contact tracing and all of that, and just try to increase the chances of being able to play every game on time in the NCAA tournament. So before we even start with the games, that was the big story for me. And that's kind of weird, because we had 10 games, and that was such a big story, as I said, involving two teams that didn't even play yesterday. And on top of that, you had Shaka Smart, who's still out, not able to coach because he tested positive. and Texas was missing some starters in their game against Oklahoma. It was either Wednesday night or Thursday, and then you find out Kentucky has a big outbreak of this problem. So it was bizarre to say the least.
Yeah, it was. You look around Kentucky. This is you're right. It's a bad crop of one and dones. It's, to me, it looks like John Calipari's just not having fun. He's not connecting with these guys. And as the longer this season goes on and as it plays out, you can see that he's never been considered to be one of the better strategy guys, X and O's. He just overwhelms you with the odds in his favor, better talent. Kentucky fans, they're looking at what they pay Calipari. Look at these recruiting classes every year. It's almost unnoticed that they're number one or two every year, yet they've got one national championship to show for it. You look at a program like Kansas, they're there. They'd won until last year 14 Big 12 basketball championships in a row. Jimmy, let's talk about it. I think you can get bored with winning, and if that happens, it trickles down to every part of the program, the players, the managers, trainers, and then the fans, though, are the ones left paying for this, and it makes them really angry.
Well, I think you have a situation with Kentucky where uh, you have a divide. I think you have a segment of fans that knows by being exclusively a one and done program that they've always had a talented group of players that has allowed them to be competitive against anybody. And even in years in which they would struggle early to try to mesh as a team, uh, oftentimes by the time of the SEC tournament's arrival, uh, they would seem out of nowhere to really come together and win not only the SEC tournament, but also make a deep run into the NCAA tournament. And he's had a number of Final Four appearances. He's had they won the national championship in 2012. Lost to UConn in the finals, and they had the 38-0 team that lost to Wisconsin in 2015. So they've been right there at the doorstep. But at Kentucky, when you have this array of talent coming into the program every year, even though most of it is leaving after 1 year, they'd always been able to, for the most part, come through with a new crop that was going to make them competitive in every game. But I think now a lot of the fan base is getting nervous since they hadn't won the national championship since 2012. And then you combine with the first really subpar year involving the one and done. So there's a lot of pressure coaching there, and the modern day player, it's hard. I think they're harder to coach because of the AAU influence and a lot of the advice they get from outside sources. And then you have another segment of Kentucky fans, I think, that would, like to see talented players, but not necessarily surefire one and done players that are going to stay with the program 2-3 years at least, sometimes 4. And we've seen in the NCAA tournaments over the last 15 years since the one and done came into effect that the teams that have won championships for the most part and have done very well have been the teams that have had players that have been together for 3 or 4 years and have developed that chemistry and experience that you need.
Yeah, you look at the Final Four. Well, let's go back 18 years ago, 20 years ago. Gonzaga they came on the scene. Mark Few is an excellent coach. Every year they're there, just like Boise State in football. They've been around a long time. I think a lot of people thought, well, this is just an anomaly. It's not. You start to build a culture. You can't just have good players. You've got to have teams, and then you build the culture and the teams, and then everything starts to fall in place. But you've got to have the right people there. Let's move on from Kentucky. Let's look at Alabama yesterday. Undefeated in the SEC. They play Oklahoma yesterday on the road. They did not win. Oklahoma's a really good team, and they've got some serious talent. This Alabama team, again, undefeated in the SEC. They didn't win, but you really didn't see them get embarrassed in this game. What's the takeaway for you and what you saw?
I thought it was an extremely disappointing loss for Alabama, based on the fact that Oklahoma was playing without two key starters, including their leading scorer in Austin Reeves. And after the game, I think Nate Oates described it pretty accurately. He said, this is the third straight game in which we did not play well. We hung on. We made a key basket in the last minute to get us out of danger against Mississippi State. Where I think they were up 2 and made a big 3 to extend the margin, to 2 scores, and they end up winning the game. And then against a Kentucky team that they just destroyed 2 weeks earlier in Lexington, they were behind most of the game. Kentucky did a really good job slowing down their transition game, and Alabama has not been good in their half court offense these last 3 games. And Kentucky really had a good chance to win the game. I know the score suggests otherwise, 70-59, but that was a slew of Alabama free throws in the final 45 seconds where Kentucky was just desperate to foul them. But Alabama needs to get back on track. And again, I think they felt they had a great opportunity to win at Oklahoma and just didn't play well. And really, for me, it starts with Petty. He just didn't have a good game. And he's really the key for them. Everything else seems to feed off of him. And down the stretch, their half-court offense and for a big portion of the game, it just seemed disjointed. Their shot selection wasn't good, and you have to give Oklahoma credit. And a lot of people don't realize this is the first time since 2014 that a Power 5 conference program has beaten 3 consecutive opponents ranked in the top 10, and they're going to be playing a 4th consecutive top 10 opponent tomorrow night against Texas Tech.
Yeah. What really is interesting to me, you talk about John Petty. Teams will live and die with the three-pointer. And John Petty is so hot and so strong, but there's no way a guy goes out every night and is going to drain 35-40% of his three-point shots. Yet Alabama's undefeated coming into this Oklahoma game. At least they are in the SEC. That speaks highly of the team. Alabama's got a team, and there's a lot of veteran leadership on the Alabama team. I mean, Colin Sexton was a one and done a couple of years ago, but I think it's impressive when you consider the success of this Alabama team in year 2 under Nate Oates. Look, Mitch Davis has just joined us. He's going to have 15 to 20 minutes with us here on a Sunday afternoon on the Sidelines wrap-up show, the Sunday Sidelines.live wrap-up show. Again, we'll be with you 3 to 5 p.m. Central. Follow us, www.sidelines.live. And, of course, on Twitter, @sidelines_live. Mitch, Jimmy and I have talked about Kentucky, talked about the Oklahoma-Alabama game. We've talked about this SEC Big 12 challenge and maybe a little overlap, but you've got limited time before you have to go. What was the takeaway for you after watching 10 SEC Big 12 matchups yesterday from the morning until the evening?
It was a big, big day for the Southeastern Conference yesterday. I was a little disappointed in Alabama. I thought Alabama and LSU could have had better performances, especially given LSU. They were up, I think, 6 or 8 with 2 or 3 minutes to play, and they just collapsed. But overall, an amazing day for the Southeastern Conference. A lot of big wins. You saw Mississippi State get a 40-point win over Iowa State. Of course, Tennessee with a 19-point win over Kansas. And then you go down the line. Texas A&M goes into Manhattan, Kansas to get that win over K-State. It was just such a big day for the Southeastern Conference. And I think it really sets the tone for the conference heading into the NCAA tournament March Madness era.
Mitch, you look at the Kansas program, look at the Kentucky program, two of the top 5 winningest programs of all time. You know, Kentucky is in a nosedive right now, and that's a shocker considering the talent they have. That looks like it's dysfunctional this year. What about Kansas? I know the NCAA issue that blew up on a lot of schools back in late September of 2017. It's affecting a lot of schools. Kansas, it's not like they've fallen off a cliff, but what's your take on where they are? And LSU is dealing with the same problems, but hey, they held their own yesterday against Texas Tech. That's the top 10 program, and played for the national championship 2 years ago. But your takeaway there?
Yeah, so Kansas, actually more stuff came out yesterday right before tip-off of the Tennessee game for the Jayhawks. They said that there was 3 current players that each received close to $100,000 to $150,000 by assistant coaches on the Kansas Jayhawk basketball staff. And, when you look at programs like Kansas and LSU, you honestly have to throw up your shoulders and ask, how do these guys, Bill Self and Will Wade, still have a job? And is there no integrity in the sport of college basketball right now? And that's something that a lot of people like myself who love the game, follow the game, and are students of the game, are starting to begin to wonder, where is the integrity of college basketball? Because those two guys, and Coach Self and Coach Will Wade, are the most cheating guys in college basketball, probably history in the last 20 to 30 years.
Well, it's hard to believe. Jimmy, come on in here on this one. If they've got Will Wade on tape, they've got Sean Miller, coach in Arizona, and other coaches, how have they gotten away with this? I know Jimmy Ott made the point, hey, Auburn's got Bruce Pearl, and I understand what Jimmy was saying, but hey, Bruce Pearl, what happened with him at Tennessee was nothing like this. And then Chuck Person, whatever he did, he got community service. I don't think anybody's gone away to prison, but the state of college basketball, and there's always, the rumors around certain programs. Oh my goodness, they're dumping off, sack loads of money. I mean, we've always heard that. Sonny Smith said yesterday when he was coaching, there were 4 investigators at the NCAA. I don't know how many there are now. I'd like to know that number, but nothing really relevant has come of this investigation over 3 years into it.
Well, I think a big factor in this situation, as far as not having any action being taken and so forth, has been the timing of the virus. When it took place in the middle of the conference tournament last year, and it just shut everything down. And around that time, there was a lot of noise being made about not only the Kansas situation, but Duke's process in signing Zion Williamson, because Curtis Townsend, the Bill Self assistant at Kansas, was on a tape-recorded phone conversation with Dawkins, the guy with Adidas, asking him what it would take to be competitive and what would be necessary to have a chance to sign Zion Williamson. And it's on tape. And and so there was a lot of noise about, Duke really being on the verge of getting nailed. And then we talked about Sean Miller with signing Ayton a couple of years ago, where he was had a tape phone conversation talking about payments to him. And I think the virus kind of pushed it off to the sidelines there, while everything focused on just trying to get a season in, because after missing the NCAA tournament last year, that is 90% of the NCAA office's operating expenses. that they have to have the tournament being played. And this year, everything's focused on making sure it does happen. So it's really just been a weird 12 months in college basketball surrounding these investigations. And then the I can't even remember the last time you've had um, uh, a situation in which Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, and Kansas are all having serious problems. So it's just it's almost hard to explain.
It is. And Mitch, talk about North Carolina, the ACC. This is the weakest I've seen that conference that I don't remember it being this weak. Duke, North Carolina, Florida State's tried to make that program successful. Georgia Tech, no excuse when you think about the talent that's right there in the metro Atlanta, 6 million people and growing every day. But I'd like your thoughts on the ACC, the mess that it is right now.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the changing of leadership at the at the commissioner position. I know the commissioner of the ACC is stepping down. I think his last day was last week. And when you're in that transition period and he's kind of riding out the storm, it's really hard to gain any type of momentum. But I fully expect for their new commissioner to come in there and do things like Greg Sankey did with basketball in the SEC. And like you said, this is probably the weakest that I've seen the American Coastal Conference in my lifetime. And it's quite sad because I've always enjoyed watching from afar Duke and Carolina, North Carolina State. Wake Forest was good at one point. And back in the day when Maryland was a part of the conference as well, that was a really fun basketball conference. And now that Maryland jumped ship to the Big Ten, it does take away a little bit of it. But I do miss the old days of the ACC where they literally beat the crap out of each other. When you watch Duke and Carolina, you knew you were going to see a fighter. When you watch NC State and Duke play, or now they've got Miami and other teams that just don't belong in the ACC. But the ACC of old is going to make a comeback, and I fully prophesy that ACC is going to be back to its dominant stage within the next 3 to 5 years on the basketball spectrum.
All right. While you talk about the ACC rising in the next 3 to 5 years, I would think the SEC is going to continue its rise. There's a huge commitment to basketball, as there is football, of course, which pays for everything, and college baseball, which benefits every other sport. What about, you go up there to the Big Ten. And Jimmy is adamant about Big Ten being the best basketball conference in America this year. I don't disagree, but look, we do this every week. I'll try to do this. Mitch, I know you've only got a few more minutes before you got to go, but give me your top 4 or 5 teams in the country right now. Make a case for each one.
Real quick on the Big Ten, then I'll jump over to that. But the Big Ten, to me, should to be the best. And we haven't had a champion since Michigan did it in 2000 and 2003, whenever that was. To me, the Big Ten is the most overrated basketball conference. I think the 2 best basketball conferences right now are the SEC and the Big 12, with the ACC not far behind. Of course, you've got the American and then the Big East. The Big East is making a rise, in the Pac-12 is weak in every sport that they try to play. As far as the top 4 teams in the country, right now, Gonzaga is number 1. I think their offense is way too good. You go 1 through 8 on that lineup card, and I tell you what, there is not a weak link on that Gonzaga team. Watching Baylor yesterday, I think the same thing about Baylor. Those 2 teams on a collision course for the Final Four, the national championship game. It's actually going to be pretty interesting because Mark Few dropped a comment that said that they're going to try to schedule a crazy non-conference game within the next week or this weekend because they have an off date because of COVID testing at one of their future opponents. I think it was St. Mary's or somebody like that. So they're going to try, which is funny because Baylor also has a bye week on Saturday. So we could have a Gonzaga-Baylor game on Saturday afternoon, either neutral site. They're supposed to play at Dickies Arena there in Fort Worth, a brand new, beautiful basketball facility down there in Fort Worth. But they could also play at either Gonzaga or at Baylor. 3 and 4, as of right now, I would say, it's such a toss-up Iowa, I think Iowa would be my third pick. Problem with Iowa is they're so streaky. They live and die by what Luka Garza does. And my fourth team, as of right now, I had Alabama up there. I would take the field. I think somebody in the field is the fourth best team. I know that's a cop out, but I just don't think there's a fourth best team in the country as of right now.
All right, one last question before you got to go. Give us your just the Cliff Note version. What's going on with University of Memphis basketball? Everybody in Memphis love Penny Hardaway coming back. He's one of the favorite players of all time. Won 3 straight state championships in a row at East High School. That was high school. He's in college, regarded as a great recruiter. I don't hear people saying he's a great coach. And, what is a great coach? Is that a guy that can put a bunch of egos together and get them all to paddle in the same direction? That's part of it. But for what Memphis fans want and what they believe their program is, tell me this. Give them an A, B, C, D, F. I want a grade for University of Memphis basketball. We'll let you off after that.
I would grade it a C right now because, you see progress, you see improvement, but that you also have games against SMU where the Tigers were down as much as 18 points and then they came back, lost by 2 points. I would give them a C right now. They've got 3 massive home games this weekend. Monday night against UCF, Wednesday or Thursday night against UCF, and then Saturday afternoon against East Carolina. Those 3 games, if the Tigers can put together 3 wins heading into Cincinnati next Thursday night, Tigers could be in really good position to put themselves to make a little run here at the NCAA tournament and also in the American Athletic Tournament there in Dallas.
Look, it's year 3 of Penny Hardaway. What were you expecting at this point? I mean, that number 1 ranked recruiting class 2 years ago, how's that panned out?
I expected an NCAA tournament bid, but you know what? They could get that this year. They have to put together some wins, and they have to put together 3 wins here against UCF and East Carolina on Saturday.
All right, we'll watch it. Look, Mitch Davis, tell people how they can follow you on Twitter, social media, and, of course, your show, the MitchDavisShow.com. And we love having you. And let's keep putting the Twitter out, but give the people these addresses, and we'll let you go.
Yeah, thank you. You can follow me on Twitter at MitchDavis_8. And also, I'm helping you guys out at Sidelines_live there on Twitter. They can follow my website at theMitchDavisShow.com. The podcast is up there. Dropped the podcast with Mike DeCourcy this morning, and also have an SEC Big 12 Challenge recap up on the website at theMitchDavisShow.com. Going to have a lot of great content this week. Going to have hopefully a really fun interview on Friday, hopefully with Sonny Smith. We're working out the details with that. And then tomorrow we're going to be talking with the Memphis baseball coach, Coach Shimrock, about the upcoming Memphis baseball season.
Yeah, I love it. College baseball season. Looks like they're going to play the full season. Basketball. People are working through this. I love it. And again, Mitch, we appreciate more than we can say in words what you're doing for us. And look, this is your one-stop shop for sports information. Come to sidelines.live.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being on here. People can find out about Mitch Davis, Jake Crane, the J-Boy podcast, and can come there to the www.sidelines.live website. We are tied in again with Mitch Davis, Jake Crane, some of the top minds in the country. We've got Jimmy Hodge on here with us right now up in Knoxville. And looks like Gordon was on there for a minute, but I think he may have been run over by a train or a something just now. But Gordon Ford will be joining in with us. I think Gordon is still operating on a party line over in Bug Tussle. Gordon, we had you on.
No, I'm not.
We had you on there for a second. We heard some kind of a honk or something. What was that?
That was you, dude, man. You're over there in the wilderness. Some coyote probably bid your cord or something over there.
You know what it was? I got to adjust that metal plate in Audrey's head. That's what it was. But hey, Gordon Ford, thanks for joining us. We just had Mitch Davis on, mild-mannered reporter from a small Midwestern town, Mitch Davis of the MitchDavisShow.com. And now we've got Gordon Ford and his trusted sidekick, Homer. Gordon, Jimmy and I and Mitch have been talking about this SEC Big 12 Challenge, and the takeaway from it, look, there was some good basketball yesterday. I want to hear what Gordo and Homer think and what their thoughts are about that challenge. And we're going to look ahead at state of basketball around the country.
Well, Homer's not doing anything right now. He's outside doing his business, and But anyway, one thing that jumped out is Kentucky didn't play Texas like they were supposed to, and Missouri came back on TCU. Oklahoma State is a good team, and they beat Arkansas. The game I watched was Texas Tech. Watched a lot of that, and I mean they're a fine ball club. And West Virginia, Florida beats them. Tennessee just routed Kansas. I mean, that was really, just a public beheading there. And Mississippi State beat a sorry Iowa State team, and they played pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, I mean, it was. I think Alabama going down wasn't good, but at the end of the day, I think it was good for the SEC.
Yeah, watching that Auburn-Baylor game, I mean, Baylor number 2 team in the country behind Gonzaga.
I was going to get to them, Rob.
Yeah,
keep going.
Yeah, and I just think that Baylor is just it's a better team, and Auburn team, very inexperienced team. Sharif Cooper was really taken out of the game, and I think Jake Crane has made a point to say this when Powell comes back onto the team at Auburn from the concussion. I don't know when that's going to be. As Jake says, it'll allow it'll help Auburn because they won't be able to double team Sharif Cooper. But look, Baylor's a better team. We know that. 84-72, they beat Auburn. But look, I like these matchups. Mitch Davis thinks that those are the top 2 conferences in America. Jimmy Hodge is really high on the Big Ten. But go on from there. And then, Jimmy, I want you to respond to not attacking you about the Big Ten, but Mitch doesn't agree. And, I think that we've got it's pretty damn competitive out there, but I do think the SEC is second or third best league right now.
Oh, well, I haven't been adamant, but I think this is the strongest the Big Ten has been, and actually in my memory, and I guess the reason it kind of stands out because they haven't won the national championship since 2000 when Michigan State won it. Came close a couple of times, but still, I've always felt that they have been overrated. I never thought much most years about their chances to make a run in the tournament, but this is a year where from top to bottom, they've got a lot of really good teams. Of course, we all know anybody that watches college basketball with any regularity can see that Gonzaga and Baylor are just in a different class from everybody else. But then you have a little group of 3 or 4 teams, I think, after that. And Michigan, up until a couple of weeks ago, they were undefeated. They looked really good. And then last week they got hit by the China virus. And it affected quite a few of their players. So they've been on a 2-week quarantine. That it was announced last Sunday, and I don't think they will be able to play again until at least next weekend and maybe the early part of next week. And Michigan State had not played a game since January 10th, and they played at Rutgers on Wednesday and got beat by 30. Worst defeat a Tom Izzo team has ever suffered in the Big Ten. And I think you just, this virus thing, and I don't know what Gordon thinks about this, and I am like you, Gordon, my initial thought on yesterday didn't even involve a game being played. It was the Kentucky situation because I thought they lost their best chance to get a victory against the highest ranked team they're going to play the rest of the season. And the reason that's so big, now they have to not only win out, but I don't know if that'll be enough if the virus keeps the Power 5 conference tournaments from being played. So, that's something to think about there. But, yeah, I mean, I think Iowa is really good, but yet, they go to Illinois, who's got a lot of talent, and they lose there. And there are a lot of places in the Big Ten you go on the road, you're going to have a tough time winning. But I think they have a really strong core, of teams. I mean, there's nobody in college basketball in my mind that can make a run at Gonzaga or Baylor unless they suffer a key injury or two. But to me, the Big Ten is just noticeably better than they have been, and I got to put the Big 12.
No doubt about that.
Yeah. And the Big 12, and we mentioned this earlier. They're stronger than they've been in forever, and you better hope they were, because it was ridiculous Kansas winning it 14 years in a row. But I mentioned earlier I thought it was a disappointing loss for Alabama because Oklahoma was playing without two starters, including their leading scorer Austin Reeves, and Alabama just disjointed. And this is the third game in a row they haven't played well in.
Let me say this real quick before we go back to Gordo. You're talking about the Power 5 conferences not being able to potentially have their tournaments because of the virus. And I'm hearing and I'm reading, I read a lot, we all do. Some athletic directors around the country are considering, as more people get the vaccines, or several of them, for the virus, that could mean more people would be allowed to attend the games. Look, TV ratings are what they are, but when you're selling the tickets to the conference tournaments, obviously regular season games, conference tournaments, and the NCAA tournament, that's some serious jack. You can't deny that. So that's something we need to be keeping our eyes on. But Gordo, come back.
I think you're right. I mean, as a matter of fact, I talked to a former Ole Miss player yesterday, Joe Harvell, and we were talking about the Ole Miss's basketball game. And he asked me if you got your tickets yet. Well, I said they haven't sent me anything because I'm a season ticket holder at Ole Miss. And he got to talking, well, how many you think they're going to let in the games? I said, well, I don't know. It depends on, how this vaccine works. And talking to another Rebel friend today, we talked about the same thing. So I don't know. You got people, that are, that kind of blow it off like some people do. And then there are people who are just, scared to death of it. But I don't know. I think that if the vaccine works, I think they would have to let more people in, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I'm smarter than a lot of people. And so are the three of us together, plus Audrey and Lance and Delta. I mean, you got to be disciplined. That's what Tommy Tuberville always says, who's now a U.S. Senator, regular on the Sidelines broadcast. Got to be disciplined. Masks, whatever, do what you got to do. Don't put yourself in a position to fail. But Jimmy, Gordo, 90% of the NCAA's budget comes from the basketball tournament. They don't make money from college football. So it's very important that schools handle this and do it right. And again, I'm going to say this about Vanderbilt. They seem to be just throwing their teams in front of the Mack truck of gloom, despair, excessive misery. That old hee-haw song. It's like they don't want to be able to play. You cannot continue to feel sorry for yourself and have a pity party. Okay? Can't tread water forever. You got to start swimming back to shore. Vanderbilt basketball, it's just, Gordon, Jimmy, y'all are, you're George Plimptons, you're bon voyants. Again, when it comes to appreciation of football, basketball, the college game, you appreciate it like very few people in America do. I'll start with you, Jimmy, and then go back to Gordon. How in the world did Vanderbilt get into this mess? And because it's inexcusable. Jimmy, your response in about 2 minutes, and then Gordo, and then after that, we'll take a quick commercial break.
Well, I think it started with the death of David Williams. I guess it was 2 years ago, and since that time, they've had two different ADs. Malcolm Turner, who brought in Jerry Stackhouse, is no longer there, and they have a former women's basketball player at Vanderbilt now who has taken the job. And I tell you, I will give her credit, though. I thought Clark Lee was was a very good hire as the head football coach, considering the situation. Vandy was in, defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, former Vanderbilt player that does know the culture there. And I thought he made some wise choices on his coaching staff. So I think they're on a good start in trying to become competitive. But clearly, your support of your administration is just absolutely huge.
It is.
And so that gets you on the right track. And then when you do bring a coach in one of the revenue sports, they have to have the ability to evaluate coaches, who they want to bring in. Will they fit in with the other coaches that you bring in? Because your coaching staff really does have to be a tight-knit group and understand and have a common understanding on what the objective or the mission statement, so be it, or so to speak, is for your coaching staff and what you need to do for your program to be successful.
Great points. And that was very concise. I couldn't agree more. Gordo, a couple of minutes here, and then we're going to take a quick commercial break and be back with more. But I want to hear what you say.
Well, I'm going to quote U2, the band. They wrote a song called Out of Control. And when you brought Malcolm Turner in there, and like the previous athletic director had been there, it did a good job. I mean, and then, you kind of ran Kevin Stallings off. I mean, he had his time there. People dogged him out and he wasn't getting it done and this and that. Man, that guy won a lot of games.
He did.
And then you replace him, Bryce Drew, who didn't get it done. Team revolted on him. Ugh. And then you brought Malcolm Turner in there. Not only was $17 million missing, I mean, his hire at coaching was missing too because he didn't do anything. You left the football coach there forever for 7 years, losing, and then lost every game. And, I'm going to have to admit, I like Clark Lee. I'm like Jimmy. I think he's doing some good things. And I think that, he will have them competitive. But you've got to address Stackhouse. And just what was just more mind-boggling, I was watching a game the other night, and I know, Rob was in there skinning some fish or something, so he didn't answer my call. But when I saw that Stackhouse was on a 6-year contract, I about urinated all over myself. I said, I cannot believe they would even think about it. But then again, Malcolm Turner did all that, plus $17 million. They went through a whole fund of $17 million. Where did all that money go?
Yeah.
When you let things like that happen at your university, that's why you're in disarray.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Let's do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Before we do, let me say this about one of our sponsors, Tom Dorian of the Dorian Insurance Agency, the Dorian Agency, 6240 Poplar Avenue in East Memphis, right by the Chick-fil-A, Poplar and Massey. You cannot miss it. Easy to find his office, 901-328-5858. Look, homeowners, life insurance, property and casualty, call Tom Dorian. He's a friend of mine, father of 5, CBHS alumnus, University of Memphis alumnus, 3-year starter on the offensive line. Call him, Tom Dorian. Everybody's All-American, the Dorian Agency. And check him out on our website, sidelines.live. We'll be with you till 5 o'clock Central today. Thanks for listening. Remember, follow us at sidelines_live on Twitter. We'll be right back.
He said he did.
Oh, he did? Okay. All right. I didn't know that. I did not know that. So like Ed McMahon. Hey, Gordo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the headsets, when you first got on, like sometimes you come on and it takes you 2 attempts when you call in, and I don't know, but like today it was kind of like, it sounded like a horn honking. I didn't know what that was. And I mean, somebody hey, did y'all hear about that guy that killed those 2 25-year-old boys up at Reelfoot in the duck blind this past week?
No, I didn't.
Jimmy, did you hear about that story?
No.
Yeah, he went over there in the blind out on the lake. They were like 40 yards. Everybody's on top of each other in those quote public
Yeah, I did
blinds.
hear about that. He got pissed off
Yeah.
because they killed more ducks than him.
Yeah, and so he went over there and they said, "Why don't you just hunt with us?" Apparently, he took his gun out and then just unloaded and killed him. And then they found him dead in the lake, which I figured they would probably, killed him. I don't know, but man, there's some rough people that are up there. And I mean, we're hunting on private land, but man, you got to be careful. But that was a mess. How much longer do we come back? Okay, a minute. Okay. But Gordon and Jimmy, did y'all watch every game yesterday or parts of them?
Most of them.
Yeah.
Watch parts of them. Yeah.
I wish we would do this. And I said this in football. I think it'd be so much fun, kind of rotate it, do an SEC, Big Ten, SEC, and just have all the conferences. I think it'd be awesome.
He didn't have Tom Doran. He has been done on here twice.
Okay. Why did he do that?
I'm sure it was a mistake.
But
Okay.
you know what? You think about it. This tells you how far Kansas is falling.
Oh, do what?
Tennessee beat them like that. I mean,
This is not. He can't do that. Okay. Yeah. Well, didn't they beat Kansas last year at Kansas?
No.
No. They got
Kansas
killed.
beat them.
Yeah.
But this was Kansas' third loss in a row.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of on a downhill slide. And
Yeah.
I mean, they started the
10
game.
seconds?
They were one.
Okay. Hey, hold on. 10 seconds. Now we're going to pick on that. Okay. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you on the Sidelines.live Sunday afternoon wrap-up show, and appreciate everybody out there listening. Again, you can always follow us. If you miss a show, they're all archived on our website. Thanks to our man, Nigel Price, a native of Hereford, England, at the Sidelines.live website, and we'll be with you till 5 p.m. Central. Look, Jimmy Hodge, Gordon Ford, both of you made really good cases for, hey, what's wrong with Vanderbilt basketball? How did it get to be such a mess? Look, let's look at around the SEC. And you start looking at LSU. And, Mitch Davis, when he was on for about 20 minutes, Gordon, right before you with Jimmy and me, he's talking about Will Wade. How is he still coaching? And despite all the, buzzards circling and people just constantly bringing him up as how is he still coaching? Will Wade and his team are focused, and they did not win yesterday. Got beat like 5 or 6 points to Texas Tech. But what do you think is going to happen ultimately, Gordon, with this investigation? The story broke late September 2017. Auburn is taking a self-imposed year off from going to the tournament this year. It's a good year. They're completely starting over, lost all 5 starters from last year, but nobody else really has done a damn thing. North Carolina, Duke, Kansas, they're just playing kick the can. And Jimmy's talked about the Dawkins documentary. Your thoughts first and then back to Jimmy, because the whole thing to me, it's disgusting. There's no accountability. Sonny Smith said yesterday on the show, the NCAA used to have 4 investigators. I don't know how many they have now, but nobody is held accountable. And Bruce Pearl just throws Auburn in there and get it over with. Chuck Person got a bunch of community service. He's not going to prison. They've got guys on tape, but we all remember when John DeLorean was on tape? Remember when Marion Barry was on tape? Sometimes it just doesn't matter. Reality's stranger than fiction. Gordo?
Well, first of all, like the Beach Boys said, God only knows. And one of the things is that's helped a lot of these schools is that, right now, you just anywhere in any job, people aren't showing up. They're not doing what they're supposed to do because we've got the COVID or we were exposed to the COVID.
Yeah.
And this and that. And nobody's working. And, even your office, Rob, you made mention that, you couldn't even go in there.
Yeah.
So the thing is, do you think these NCAA investigators are going in there worrying about Will Wade during the COVID? No. I mean, there's a lot of people who are going to get hammered when it's all said and done, but how long it is, and by that time, it may blow over. It's just like a trial of a murder or something.
Yeah.
You may have the guy dead to right, but evidence goes away and all that. So,
Yeah.
you know, all I can say is, should he get it? Yes. But will he? And when will he get it? You know, I think eventually they're going to get him. But look at, we talked about Kansas basketball. My buddy Lee Hunt used to be the coach at Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah.
I would call him up there, and he said that I talked back in September, and he said that, Bill Self's out there crying, threatening to sue the NCAA if they come in and investigate him and all that. And they hadn't gone in there and hammered them, and they were in that documentary. So who knows? I mean, I think, yes, they'll get it, but North Carolina never got it. And, they had them dead to right. Louisville, they threw Rick Pitino out, and they're back in the NCAA a year later. So
Yeah.
what does it really matter? Who knows who's going to get it, or even if they get it, or when they'll get it?
Well, I think everything changed years ago when Florida State was in the crosshairs of the NCAA. And they were smart. They went and hired a group of attorneys from Shawnee Mission, Kansas City, Olathe, whatever, that played golf probably with people at the NCAA headquarters. They got away with it. And that's what people do. Look at Miami, all the stuff that they had going on. North Carolina, you name the schools, nothing is happening. And I'm telling you, you got to improvise, adapt, and overcome. The virus notwithstanding, you got to move on. I mean, it is inexcusable.
But there's your excuse, Rob. It doesn't matter if it's notwithstanding.
People have got
There's your excuse.
Well, you're right. No, you're right. And it's what people are using. And it is really, there's nothing being done. Of course, now they were able to get Tennessee and the Tennessee chancellor. I've never seen that before in my life. I don't know if y'all have, but I hadn't.
No, Gerald Turner hung Ole Miss out when he was there, hung Billy Brewer out.
Well, but it wasn't.
He didn't like it.
But it wasn't that bad on that TV. That was awful what happened. And I'm going to be willing to bet y'all a sack full of crystals with extra onions. Jeremy Pruitt gets a big chunk of his buyout, maybe all of it. He's got Lightfoot and Franklin law firm in Birmingham, and they are really good at dealing with the NCAA, and this is a great group of lawyers. But Jimmy, your thoughts on all this mess that's going on with the NCAA?
Well, I think Gordon described it. I mean, it's just been kind of pushed to the side again. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the NCAA, because of the virus breaking out in the middle of the conference tournaments last year and just completely shut the season down just on a moment's notice. In fact, some games were just during halftime were just declared over. And that was the end of the college basketball season. And just like that. And like as we mentioned, the NCAA basketball tournament provides 90% of the NCAA corporate offices operations, which allows them to function. And they cannot, under any circumstances, not allow the NCAA tournament to be not held this year. So they're going to do whatever it takes, and that's why I've said that. That's why there's such a lot of scuttlebutt about the possibility of the Power 5 conference tournaments, and every other conference tournament that determines the field for the NCAA tournament may not be played because they want to make sure that no games in the NCAA tournament are postponed or have to be delayed or have to have any kind of disruption because they need that revenue. Yeah, there are not going to be many fans, but the TV contract money is what's at stake because you get no money from the TV network if the games aren't played. So that's kind of where it's at. But I did want to, talking about Will Wade, I'm telling you what, Gordon, to me, of the games that were played yesterday, and I was like you, I thought the big story was the game that wasn't played, the Kentucky Texas game not being played. But you're looking at LSU with a 7-point lead with exactly 1 minute left in the game. and they blow that lead within 15 seconds and end up giving up the last 12 points of the game. I mean,
well, Matt
it's
McClung
just,
had a lot to do with that, stealing the ball, hitting those threes, and he basically led them back.
well, when he hit the first three, that cut it to 61-57. And brilliant coaching by Chris Beard to foul
He's
one
a
of the
great
front,
coach.
yeah, to foul one of the front court players that wasn't a good free throw shooter. He misses it. Tech gets the rebound. They come down. They miss a three. They tip it out, and McClung anticipates where the ball is going to be tipped. He recovers it in the right corner, makes another shot to cut it to one, and then Watford makes an inbounds pass that me or you could have intercepted. And they intercept the pass and make a layup. All of a sudden, Texas Tech's ahead. LSU misses their last three shots of the game, and they end up losing. They turn a 7-point lead into a 5-point loss. That is the type of loss that can really just take the air out of your season, and it was a stunning collapse for me. I thought that yeah. It was just, again, with all the controversy surrounding LSU and the fact they just got annihilated just over a week ago by Alabama, and then got really manhandled in Lexington. It just wasn't something that they needed.
Yeah, I want to say this too, Jimmy. Believe you're right. I would say it's better than better than 50-50 chance. I'd say probably 80% chance we will not see conference tournaments. The NCAA will find a way. They will put pressure on the conferences and say, look, we can't afford to have all these conference tournaments and the virus spread like wildfire and this, kill the NCAA tournament. And I would think that's what's going to happen. And they're going to try to have that bubble in Indianapolis, have all the games played there. And that's also where, of course, the NCAA headquarters is. And guys, the NCAA headquarters, it was in Shawnee Mission, Kansas for years. Now it's in Indianapolis, and it's staffed mostly by Big Ten people. Okay. That's the thing about the NCAA headquarters. What do they ever do to the Big Ten? Really? I mean, Penn State, they took away 157 victories, and then they gave them back later. I mean, it's a double standard. And of course, and they made sure that Ohio State did get in. And you know what? They curb stomped Clemson in the college football playoffs, and then Alabama laid waste to Ohio State. But guys, nothing. There's just no accountability. And you're right. The investigators are not going to go around and set up meetings because everybody will say, well, we can't meet because of the virus. It is put so much on hold. Look at the Catholic schools in Boston, all over the country. Catholic schools are rocking and rolling, man. These kids are on fire. Their enrollment's increasing. They're pushing forward. Guys, look, man, I want to say, you look around you, SEC, Big 12, Big 10, ACC is down this year. We talk about it. But look, now the Pac-12. Jimmy, you mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago, Larry Scott's contract, I think, ends June 30th as commissioner of the Pac-12. He's been there for 11 or 12 years. Former guy with the Women's Tennis Association. The longer he's been commissioner of the Pac-12, the worse things have gotten. People are not really paying attention to the exodus of people that are pouring out of California right now. You got to make a living. You got a 13% state income tax. People are scattering, like in the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. People left Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Kansas, headed out west to Bakersfield and the Central Valley. That's big rice country, 450 miles from Bakersfield to Fresno. Breadbasket of America, they like to call it. Things are changing. Gordo, talk about the Pac-12, the state of that conference, because this is just shocking when you look at that league and what's going on with not just football or basketball, baseball. It's everything.
It's in disarray. I mean, you're like, well, let's put it this way. They kicked the 49ers out of their stadium and made them play in Arizona. That ought to sum that state up right there. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't care. And tell me this, if you're a recruit, do you think you want to go play in California for one of those schools? I mean, it may sound cool for the last 30 years or something, but what's cool about it anymore? You can't even go to the grocery store. But
Yeah.
in essence, look, USC won the Pac-12. They lost in their conference championship, which made them put on, okay?
Yeah.
They didn't even go to a bowl. They opted not to go. And it shows you how much they care out there about football,
Mm-hmm.
and any other sport for that matter. UCLA basketball has played pretty good, but who really gets into it? I mean, when's the last time, Jimmy, you stayed up at night and watched Oregon and Stanford or something? Been probably a long time. It has no appeal anymore.
Yeah. Well, you look at
because people know what's going on out there.
Hey, look at facilities. And I'm going to throw this one now over here to Jimmy. Jimmy Hodge, you were one of the 4 people that went all over the country rebranding Adidas. You've been to just about everywhere in America. The facilities that you see at the Pac-12 schools. Now, we know about Oregon and Phil Knight. He's given over $300 million to Oregon. He's the founder, the Mr. Nike. We know about that. Other schools out there, their facility, UCLA basically has a metal building that, you expect some guy out there, and, people have in the backyard a ham radio operator. Some guy goes out there to get away from his wife and get on there and talk to people over in Mongolia or outer Slobovia. I mean, it's pitiful, Jimmy. But talk about that, because you pointed out last year in the top 300 in the February 2020 class, of the top 300 players, the ESPN top 300, only 40 of them came from the geographical footprint that makes up the Pac-12. 21 of those 40 were from California, and the majority of those left the state of California. That's not a good sign. Larry Scott, why do you even let the guy stay till June 30th? Just everybody else pays off people to get rid of him, put him in the witness protection program or whatever. What are they waiting on? Are they that stupid?
Well, when it comes to those those university presidents in the conference, they're just kind of just indifferent to it. I mean, they're mostly academics oriented, which, clearly, if you're going to be the president of a university, if you're an alumni, that's what you want out of your president. But at the same time, you're the president of the entire university. And in other parts of the country, university presidents understand that the athletic department is not the heart of the university, but it's the front porch. Yeah. And prospective students, when they see that you have a great athletic department, it helps your enrollment, and it creates a sense of pride and tremendous interest. Just look at some of these colleges that didn't have football 40 years ago, when Irk Russell left Georgia to start the Georgia Southern program. Within 5 years, they won a couple of national championships in what is now the FCS, and their enrollment skyrocketed. And that's just at lower levels. Yeah. And I can tell you, a lot of these Power 5 schools, a lot of these prospective students, especially in the SEC, they're starting to get high achievers in other parts of the country, but they're also, a lot of these students, they are sports fans. They're interested in the success of your athletic programs. That's how you generate so many alumni associations. But in the Pac-12, it's just like, it's kind of a different world. There are a lot of other things to do out there, and it's just not. It's not like the SEC. I mean, if there was ever a better mission statement that the SEC could have come up with, and it just means more, I don't know what they could have come up with, because it's so true. And in the Pac-12 in particular, with everybody involved in the equation, from administrators and everybody else, it doesn't mean more. And I guess that's kind of my explanation of it as to why they didn't get rid of Scott, 4 or 5 years earlier, because he was. Gordon, can you imagine any Power 5 conference commissioner allowing a college football season to take place that didn't begin until November 6th?
No, if that would have happened in the SEC, you would have had a revolt.
Yeah.
Rob and I, we do a couple of different shows together. And when it got started in August, you remember that, when they were deciding whether they were going to play? The SEC played. They got heat. Can you imagine someone in Anniston, Alabama, being able to see his Tide? He would revolt. I mean, people have shot each other over the Auburn-Alabama game.
Yeah.
And other schools too.
Well,
but I'm telling you, can you imagine people in Louisiana not seeing their LSU Tigers? I mean, they would have revolted if a commissioner would have tried to do something like that. I mean, they would have been up there marching on his office. You're right, Jimmy.
Look,
nobody else would put up with that type of stuff.
Yeah, August 9th, I remember being down at Orange Beach, down on the Gulf, and I was getting all kind of texts and phone calls. Oh, there's not going to be college football. And I responded, what are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? They were basing all that on what the Big Ten was saying. You remember the Big Ten took their cue from the Mid-America Conference, and then the Pac-12 took their cue from any excuse to not have football.
Well, they're the one that they're the one that tipped the ledger into playing football. There was a concern that if the Big 12 went the other way and there were only the ACC and SEC playing, that they would not have a chance to have a playoff that would be accepted. So you got to give the Big 12 credit there. They stepped up. But and again, you think about this Big Ten situation that couldn't have been handled worse by Kevin Warren. They have, after the initial decision was made, you had Trevor Lawrence and his roommate, I think Darius Rencher. They put together on a moment's notice on a Sunday night, which happened to be the day before the Big Ten made their initial announcement. They had heard that the Power 5 conference was going to announce they weren't going to play, so they organized that conference call with Najee Harris, Justin Fields, Chuba Hubbard, and Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
And at Oregon. And they put together within 3 hours of that conference call a Twitter message to the Big Ten and the NCAA talking about how can we not have the opportunity to play this football season without having any say-so, because you have to have us to have it take place anyway. And they did that tweet with all the conference letterheads on it at about 12:30 in the morning. And they didn't think much of it. And it absolutely blew up nationwide. And the response was
Trump involved too. People forget that.
And it got Ryan Day. It got Scott Frost. It got Harbaugh and some influential Big Ten coaches involved, to the point they spoke out publicly, which was a no-no in the Big Ten, because they'd always had this reputation of everybody always being on the same page. And then a week later, parents of various prominent players in the Big Ten held a demonstration outside the Big Ten offices, and Kevin Warren responded to it and said, yeah, well, we appreciate the concern by the parents and all that, but we are not going to be playing football this year. and in 2020, and the subject will not be revisited. And what happens 3 weeks later? They look like idiots when they have to come crawling back on their knees and say, we're going to play football this fall.
Yeah, and that was, to me, the arrogance of the Big Ten. And I think that's when you saw a changing of the guard, at least. They have always thought a lot more of themselves than we down here in the South do. But the Pac-12 is so weak, they were taking their cue from the Mid-America Conference and the Big Ten. And it was dangerous. And I think it hurt the brand that is the Big Ten. Look, Michigan has been running on, the way, way, way long ago. They're no longer relevant in the national championship hunt. Yeah, they got 42 Big Ten titles. Ohio State's probably got just as many or more. Because for the first, 80, 90 years that league was around, which was founded in 1896, so it's now 125 years old. It really was Barry Alvarez. Hayden Fry had success in the 80s at Iowa and 90s. But really in the late 90s, when Barry Alvarez got the Wisconsin program going, guys, that changed everything. PJ Fleck had success a year ago at Minnesota, but you can't have long-term success at Minnesota because your coach is going to get paid to go somewhere else. And those people in the Midwest are cheap. That is where polyester and all that comes from, is the Midwest. They don't spend a lot of money on football coaches. They don't do it. Their facilities, they're not that nice. The SEC, Auburn is now, because they've delayed, they have been dragging their feet for years, the last 3 or 4 years. Well, we're getting close. The Board of Trustees is going to talk about it. They're going to build a football-only facility, guys. They're saying the price tag's about $92 million. Hell, they built that Auburn Arena 11 years ago. It wasn't that much, but the cost of building materials has skyrocketed in the last couple of years, really the last few months. Okay? They're going to spend over $100 million. When Clemson built their facility, 5 years ago? It was less than $60 million. It's an arms race, guys. Just like I kept telling people, there won't be any coaches fired in the SEC or college football this year. I said, you're out of your mind. You can't afford not to get rid of coaches. I'm sorry. Nothing personal, but, Derek Mason wasn't getting it done at Vanderbilt. Will Muschamp wasn't getting it done at South Carolina. Jeremy Pruitt, that's a mess. We'll see what happens there. Gus Malzahn. How much can you pay a guy to go 8-5? Because he worked really hard at it to go 8-5. We're going to get butter. I think he ought to go in the business of having, hi, I'm Gus Malzahn. We're going to get butter. Okay, good luck. The guy made over $60 million being Auburn's coach. You say we're going to rein things in. No, it's not going to happen. But you see how important it is in the SEC and the Big 12. Bob Bowlesby, I thought he was really good about providing leadership, as was Mike Orozco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, guys. So, all right, let's move on to the next topic. College football right now. Alabama just won another national championship, number 7 for Nick Saban. And Alabama's the only school in America who can have this debate. Greatest football coach of all time. Numerically, Nick Saban was 7, Coach Bryant was 6. You could say that. As far as a character and a legend, Coach Bryant was amazing. He and Alabama and the SEC, integration in the South, that did more, with black athletes coming into the SEC schools, that did more to integrate the South than any federal edict issued from Washington. It's just the way it is, and it's amazing what has happened in the sports world. It's absolutely incredible. Nick Saban, the process, whatever you want to call it, they just keep getting better. He's hungry. Look, Gordo, from what you saw this past year and the SEC and college football, you think in spite of the virus, from about March 10th until June 8th, college athletes around the country were at home. They were working out. A lot of them, I don't think many of them completely took off. They're very competitive people. But what was the takeaway in terms of how the teams looked. But still, you had Clemson, Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, the 4 teams in the playoff. Texas A&M was number 5, but you still the top teams were still the top teams. Regardless, I just think that certain programs have a culture in place, the right people, they recruit the right kind of kids, and success and their success is not an accident. Gordo, your takeaway.
My takeaway from the season is that, the SEC was serious about playing.
Yeah.
They were serious about winning the national championship. Their conference was serious. And they are true football people. Then again, you go and you look at the Big Ten. They say they're true football people, but they weren't even going to play their conference because they had the guy that was the champ. I mean, who was over the league, who didn't really push it until, just like y'all said, all of a sudden they got pushed into it. They weren't going to do it. So if I'm a recruit, I say to myself, well, I don't know if I really want to go there, man. They may just cancel the season on me, the Pac-12 team.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, that at the end of the year, Texas, the University of Texas football, Tom Herman.
Yeah.
He was taking the 8-5, wasn't good enough. Finally, they showed some fortitude and said, we're not going to put up with this anymore. They fired him. They paid him a lot of money, such as did Auburn.
Yeah.
Those are teams that all of a sudden, Texas particularly, that decided all of a sudden, we ain't taking this no more. And they went out and hired Sarkisian, who I think will do a tremendous job for them and will get the type players they need to win and win big out there and not losing to Iowa State once in a while, because that's ridiculous if I was a Texas fan. I think that they've decided they're going to be serious. And, you look at some SEC schools that didn't play well, LSU. But one thing I'm going to give my alma mater, Ole Miss. Matt Luke wasn't getting it done. Got national embarrassed on national television. And what did they do? You had some boosters call up and say, he's got to go today. Fire it. He was done. Then they went out and hired Lane Kiffin, who is basically recruited well and looks like they're about to be turned around. So one thing I'm going to say about the SEC and the University of Texas is they were serious. Everybody else, ACC, Clemson, they are what they are. They're a serious team. But you look at the Pac-12, USC, are they serious? Jimmy, do you consider them a serious national power?
Well, 2 weeks ago, I would have told you that future of that program was to the point that I think other schools would be considering getting out of it. But I am stunned by the resurgence they've had in recruiting over about the last 3 weeks. I cannot believe some of the players they landed. I've been stunned. Yeah. But from a facility standpoint, people won't believe this, but UCLA's football practice field is adjacent to Pauley Pavilion. Now, since they've renovated Pauley, since I've been there, this may not be the case anymore. But when I was there, they did not have a football practice field. This is UCLA. That was 120 yards long. It was an 80-yard practice field. I kid you not. And I was in their locker room, and I mean, this was a number of years ago now. But Hoover High School, I guarantee you, has a larger locker room than it was then. And the only cool thing about it was, for each numbered locker, they would have plaques of the players, small little plaques that wore that number, and dressed there. Troy Aikman, Wendell Tyler, Kenny Easley. That was kind of cool. Yeah. But I was just stunned by it. And I mean, Oregon is just in another planet from everybody else, facilities wise. But when they get a new TV contract, and they couldn't have gotten one without Larry Scott's departure, that's going to change. But it is really just incomprehensible that USC and UCLA, from a facility standpoint, are not on another planet from everybody else in the conference, with the exception of Oregon.
Yeah, and you think that they have all this money at these schools, and they might. I remember George Lucas, a Star Wars guy, gave a gift at the Rose Bowl a few years ago to Southern Cal. He gave him $174 million. Certainly wasn't athletics, I guess. No surprise there. Hey, look, let's do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And before we do, I'm going to say something about a couple of our sponsors. Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas. They're not open today, but they will be open tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Get over to Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. If you are on I-40 going to Little Rock or coming from Little Rock to Memphis, go north of the Forest City exit, 11 miles. You will see Red River Ford Toyota across from Jordan's Exxon. Highway 64. If you're coming from Memphis or coming back from Heber Springs, a half mile south of Highway 64 by the Walmart in Wynne, Arkansas. Justin Wynn, the general manager, our friend, he's on the show with us all the time. Rusty Howard, the sales manager, Stacy, Nate, the sales force, they're fantastic. Also, Austin Futrell in the service department. They are open on Saturdays until noon. They can fix your car, truck, or SUV. They are committed. You can even get the process started online, redriverfordtoyota.com. It can take you less than 10 or 15 minutes. If you do everything right when you get there, you can be driving off the car. You're not going to be hotboxed by some guy with a head rug and a clip-on tie and eating breath mints trying to say, what you going to take to get you to drive this here vehicle off the lot there, sir? Not going to happen. These are great people to work with. Red River Ford Toyota, John Dobbs Jr. from Memphis, part of the ownership group. You know the name, the Dobbs name when it comes to cars, trucks. They are it. Top-notch quality. Great people there at Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. Also, Tom Dorian, friend of the show. He is Audrey and I. He is our insurance man. The Dorian Agency, 6240 Poplar Avenue in East Memphis. Give him a call. Homeowners, life insurance, property and casualty. Work with his team. Tom Dorian. Have the conversation. 901-328-5858. Again, 6240 Poplar Avenue in East Memphis, right before you see the Chick-fil-A on Poplar near Massey. Easy to find. CBHS alumnus, University of Memphis, 3-year starter on the offensive line. Tom Dorian, the Dorian Agency. Tom, everybody's All-American. We'll be right back with you till 5 p.m. Central. And again, follow us at Sidelines_live on Twitter. Be right back with you for another half hour to go. This is Sidelines.live. Hey, guys.
I put in Friday's commercial so you wouldn't have to do Tom.
You need me to go?
No. Hang on. What I'm saying is, no, just stay on. I'm gonna switch phones and call y'all back. My battery's out, so I'm switching over to Audrey's phone. So y'all, I'm gonna hang up on you and I'm gonna call you both right back here. Okay?
That is playing two commercials.
All right.
Jordan. Hey, Jimmy. I'll be right with. I'm gonna call Jimmy and then call you, Gordon. So just let me hang up. I'll call you right back. Okay. Oh, let me see your phone. Need your phone. I need your phone.
This is all messed up.
I need your phone.
My phone?
Yeah.
You're going to have to wait a minute. These commercials are all
Why is he screwing them up?
I don't know, but it is. It's playing two commercials.
That's what everybody said is happening. They're playing two things at once. Dad said happened 3 times yesterday.
Yeah, because I couldn't hear. So I didn't know.
Tell him that. I got to call these guys. My phone battery's dead. Almost dead. I don't want it to run.
My phone. I'm using it for Instagram.
I'm sorry. I got to have. I know, but I'm almost out of juice. I'd rather be safe than sorry. Hmm? Okay. Andre,
Mine's not going to have too much juice.
are you at least green? Come on. Okay. That's all. We'll be okay if I get yours. Let me see it. Hang on. Hey, let me get Jimmy on the line. Hang on. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, sir. It's 9:09:50. All right, Ian. I like them French fried potatoes. Your phone's got 2 hours worth of juice on it.
Hey.
Okay, let me get you merge in here. And okay, let me.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on one sec. Jake. Okay, I'm gonna tell Jake. Okay.
You need to go, Rob?
No. Hang on. Yeah, if you got to get off, Gordon, yeah, go ahead and drop off if you got to.
No, I'm cool.
Okay, yeah. Yes, Jake. Okay. That's right. Okay.
Are you about ready?
Hold on 1 second. 06-192-9.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, here we go. Okay, let's go. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you on the Sidelines.live Sunday afternoon wrap-up show. Broadcasting live from the Cherry Farm here in Parkin, Arkansas. Last day of duck season, man. Tell you what, all the flags at half staff here in the state is all the heat lamp food and the sausage biscuits at 5:30 in the morning with sausage gravy and eggs and drinking Jolt Cola to wake yourself up as you head out there into the duck blind. And look, a lot of people going home just kind of worn out. But of course, you can still hunt the geese till the middle of March. And of course, we get into fishing. And, I think bottom line is if it swims, flies, crawls, or runs, we're going after it. And all of you sportsmen out there, look, as Ted Nugent said, take your kids hunting so you don't have to go hunting for your kids. We're going to be with you for another 30 minutes or so here on the Sunday afternoon Sidelines Live wrap-up show. Jimmy Hodge in Knoxville, Gordon Ford in Memphis, and now Jake Crane from Tupelo, soon to be the big new location, the big bright lights, and but host of the J-Boy podcast, #1 in the country after 8 months, more than 250 episodes on some of the best guests in college football, basketball, sports, recruiting, you name it. Jake Crane, welcome to Sidelines. And are you sore from being on the couch and twisting and contorting watching the SEC Big 12 Challenge yesterday?
No, Rob, I always enjoy coming on. And no, I mean, to me, it's, I hear about how good the Big 12 is in basketball, and they run into the SEC in the Big 12 SEC Challenge and lose 5-4. And that's with LSU blowing a late lead somehow. I can't believe that they found a way to lose that game. Alabama probably played their worst game. Baylor, it just showed their superiority. I think them and Gonzaga are head and shoulders above everybody else. But, like we've been saying, the SEC at the end of the day in basketball, they're moving their way up there. And it's just another, piece of evidence that to lend itself toward the case of the SEC marching its way to dominance in college basketball.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about this SEC Big 12 Challenge. We've looked a lot at SEC and college basketball, and we've now flipped over in football. We're talking about the Pac-12, the mess that conference has become. The SEC, it does. It just means more. I love the campaign. We've talked a lot about that, but it all starts with recruiting. And I know, Jake, you're going to be on here with us these last 30 minutes. You had some interviews today, and I'm sure you're going to have some great podcasts. But Wednesday is the final chapter of National Signing Day. Again, most schools, they've already wrapped up their recruiting, that in the early signing period, December, 14th, 15th, and 16th. It's going to be hard to really make up a lot of ground. Schools we know about in the SEC, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Auburn all made coaching changes. Obviously, with the immediate transfer eligibility thing on hold, it's been tabled by the NCAA. The transfer portal, over 1,000 players have entered that. Can Auburn and these schools, how much ground can they make up? And can Auburn go from being about ranked 60th in recruiting? They typically under Gus were 8th or 9th on average every year. Can they make up enough ground to at least get in the top 25?
I think they could. It's possible with the high school kids out there, but, they're not going to rank the portal kids. And you look, Auburn just picked up their first kind of pawn piece in the Harson chess game. Ike Lau, a defensive end from Northwestern, good players, got 3 years of eligibility left, a guy that can help Auburn immediately from a pass rush standpoint. And you can really see the priority, just like we thought it was going to be, is on the defensive line and the offensive line, obviously with pass rushers, because that hurt Auburn last season. So I do believe that they could sneak up there with guys like Jawan Gaston. There's a few left out there, but again, with that early signing day, it's really kind of scraps at this point. And with a brand new coaching staff, it's hard to come in and go ahead and recreate and reestablish. I think Brian Harsin would have done a pretty good job of that. I actually would be looking at a kid named Colby Smith, offensive tackle that decommitted from Tennessee, that was in their class with all their stuff, 6'7", 315 player. I know him and Will Friend, the new Auburn offensive line coach, have a great relationship. And I think now that one guy has decided to come, typically there's a domino effect after it.
Yeah. Gordon, Jake follows recruiting, and we all try to, but Jake made some great points right there. Look at your Ole Miss team. They need defensive linemen. They're hard to find. The top tier schools in the nation have great front sevens, but they have depth. DJ Durkin, regarded as a really good defensive coordinator. He'll be back at Ole Miss this year. Lane Kiffin, great at developing quarterbacks, really at calling plays. He's a master. But if the defense doesn't improve, Ole Miss is going to be, a 500 team.
Well, I think the defense will improve, Rob. They've got a bunch of D linemen, and they're on Taiwan Malone, and most crystal balls have him 100% Ole Miss.
Yeah.
They're on a kid that Auburn was after, and you and I've talked about, I think it's Travis Mays, who's a linebacker who's big time. I don't know if Auburn gets him or what happens with him. Maybe Jake can jump in on that. But, I know he was involved with Ole Miss and Auburn, and, who knows what happens with him. But, I think he would bolster either one of those classes.
Jake, what about, you mentioned him. Also, Trevin Wallace. Auburn's fighting it out with Kentucky.
Trevin Wallace, my bad.
Yeah, and
I was wondering if that too, man.
Yeah, but it's really strange. Auburn's fighting it out for 3 stars with Kentucky.
Trevin's not a 3-star. Trevin's a 4-star,
no, I know,
almost a 5-star.
Yeah.
He probably shot up the rankings about as quick as anybody did at the end. He's the guy that would go play linebacker and be one of the best in the state. Some people thought better than Small Monday. Then they put him at running back. Then he'd go return punts and kicks. But he's going to be a linebacker at the next level. Auburn losing Travis Williams, not retaining him, pretty much floated the boat on that one, similar to how Ja'Cory Brown was for Brian Johnson at Florida, leaving Florida. So when I look at it, Rob, I think Trevor Wallace is going to Kentucky. But again, it is what it is at this point. But at least, like I said, it's hard for me to feel bad for any of the new coaches when the transfer portal, when you have guys that are proven that you know what you're going to get, which is the whole goal of evaluating. I think they're going to be heavy there. And who's to say if you don't go get 7, 8 guys out of the portal, get you 4 more out of the high school ranks, that you didn't have one of the best finishes, but you may not be ranked in the high school recruiting range, if that makes sense. So I think it's the way you slice it. Most of these teams, just like the ones that don't have new coaches, that have had coaches that have been there, are going to go to the portal first if they've got some extra spots. Because like I said, if I'm hiring a lawyer, I want him to have practiced in the same courtroom that I'm going to put him in. So it's just common sense at that point.
Yeah, I want to make sure and give you credit too, because it was 3 or 4 months ago you began Trevin Wallace is probably better than Small Munden, and I knew he was a 4-star. But I was talking about the fact that Auburn is fighting it out with South Carolina and Kentucky and schools they don't compete against when they're going after, their recruiting classes. And so, but look, I know that and they also waited late. It was December 12th when Gouge said, okay, let's go ahead and make a move on Gus.
Yeah. You can't judge, in my opinion, Brian Harsin on this first signing class. It's going to be what it's going to be. I think you could also see guys like Cody Brown, who's a 4-star running back, who signed with Tennessee, trying to get out of his NLI, just like Dylan Brooks. If that happens, I could see them both coming to Auburn. But what I look at is what he can really control. I look at the amount of 2022 offensive linemen he's already offered, 4 stars, 5 stars from around the country. They're already in on guys like Dane Shore, Riley Quick, whose brother plays at Alabama, but I think there's a good chance he goes somewhere else. especially for the baseball part of it. He's a heck of a pitcher too. But you can see the emphasis on offensive line, which is something that Gus Malzahn, especially at the tackle position, just started relying on JUCOs and graduate transfers. And that's a tough road to hoe because you don't know, you're not going to hit the lottery every time. You got to have bodies and guys that you've developed. And that's where Auburn has struggled. And ultimately, that, in my opinion, is what doomed Gus Malzahn. Because you take away the run game, his pass game isn't intricate enough to do anything. But I think Auburn is going to be right there with the big boys next year in this 2022 class. I think guys like Ty Simpson, a quarterback committed to Clemson, a 4-star, Auburn's really back in on him. You look at Tanner Bailey. So, again, it's way too early to tell. I mean, it's not fair, in my opinion, to judge Coach Hartson on anything that happens, especially with high school kids. If you're going to judge them on anything, judge them on what happens in the portal, because at least that's a fair fight right now.
That is true. Hey, Doug Dean told me he'd wanted to call in when you would be on Sunday. Doug Dean down in Birmingham, AU Daily Dose. Doug, you're on here right now. Jimmy Hodge, Gordon Ford, Jake Crane, and I know you've got some questions for Jake. A lot of people do, and I don't know if you heard his comments so far, but come on in.
Well, good Sunday to you, gents. I watched first before we get into football, and I did catch, I think, the bulk of what Jake was just commenting on, which is in lockstep, as usual, with a few of my thoughts that I'll get to. But it was fun to take measure of the SEC in basketball against a very strong conference. And I think, we get a passing grade at least. It's not always about did you win, because if you're on the road, it's not necessarily an expectation. But I for one, besides the fact that Auburn self-imposed no postseason, which I'll leave the benefit of the doubt to the AD compliance and Bruce Pearl, that the calculus for that was about right, even though it pisses me off that, there's a possibility Auburn could get good enough to get on the bubble and make it. Probably not, just what we're seeing. In any case, I think it's going to feel like anything but March Madness, because that Thursday and Friday, for my money at least, what makes it is you find a local watering hole and there's split screens all across the country on up into midnight. And it's just not, to me, it's not going to feel that. It'll still be a tournament, still counts whoever wins it. But when it's all crammed in Indianapolis with distancing and mask and minimal crowds, put an asterisk by it as far as I'm concerned. Back to football, I think Jake was in part trying to lift up the reasonable thinking contingent of Auburn people, which is probably a minority. The majority have lost their minds because Gunnar Stockton, somebody got the memo that just because Pars hired Mike Bobo, that it was a package deal and we get this 5-star kid, and so he's committed to Georgia. I don't think that was ever a package deal. And I just want to, and Jake can comment on this.
Yeah, I got a theory on that.
Do fans have such recentness, not just Auburn, a lot of fan bases, that they don't understand that the new rules, that the signing class is about 3/4, maybe more, over after December.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right, Jake?
Yep. You're exactly right. Well, that's why I said they shouldn't call this next one signing day. The first one should be called signing day. The second one should be called, hey, for real though, y'all got to leave now. So I think you had, Doug, probably 80 to 85% of kids signed. And you had some that signed and then tried to keep it a secret, like Corey Foreman, the 5-star, signed with USC, but didn't try and tell anybody like that's going to work in 2021. I think it got out 2 days later, and he went ahead and basically made a semi-announcement. But here's my thing on Gunnar Stockton. So the thing with him and Mike Bobo is so Mike Bobo in Thomasville trains quarterbacks, goes back all the time, and has a lot of relationships with guys, and has been helping guys out since they were younger. Jake Fromm, Gunnar Stockton's one of those guys, and it's just like the Manning Passing Academy almost. So when he committed to South Carolina, him and Mike Bobo have a great relationship. Jabo Shaw is his high school coach. All right, Jabo Shaw is the brother of former South Carolina quarterback Connor Shaw, who's also a coach on the staff up there. So what I believe happened is Mike Bobo leaves South Carolina basically high and dry. All right, and he's very well respected by Jabo, the people at South Carolina, all that stuff. Comes to Auburn. I do believe that Gunner was going to Auburn, but there's some things that happen in this coaching world where guys almost say this would be a really bad look for you career-wise if you took Gunner away from South Carolina. But then you watch him commit to Georgia. So in my opinion, when I look at it, I think the kid was going. I think there was a good chance he was going to Auburn. He decommitted exactly with the timing you would think, right after Mike Bobo got fired. So to me, that's one tell. He committed, I think, a day and a half after it was announced Mike Bobo got fired. Had a Zoom call with the coaches, Mike Bobo, Brian Harsin, all of them. Went great. Everybody in the world I had Mike Farrell, Director of National Recruiting, on my show. You can go back and look at it. It says, Gunner Stockton is going to Auburn. But then something changed late. I don't know if it would be a bad look for Mike Bobo and Georgia was right there to pick up the pieces, or what happened. I'm not saying they paid him or anything like that, but it's very surprising with Brock Vandegrift going in that class that Gunner Stockton would go right behind him. So hats off to Kirby Smith, but I do think Mike Bobo, there was something in there. It's just very interesting, but it's actually not the first time I've seen something like that happen.
Well, and spot on, and I'll add this. And I'm interested in the big picture. I had reached the point, I believe I'm in the mainstream, Rob and Jimmy and Jake, in terms of Auburn's strategic position, that it was past time, honestly, to make a head coaching change in Malzahn. But I had no illusions. That's one of the few. There aren't many benefits to age, Rob. That might be one of them. I had no illusions that it would be painless and seamless. When you change head coaches, you're probably going to have a minimum of 1 year of some disruption in recruiting and relationships. And my God almighty, I'm glad he didn't put a staff together that was comfortable and easy for 1 year and we would hang on to some recruits, but it wouldn't really be the staff Hars wanted. And I don't give a damn. I'm willing to wait 2-3 years and see what the product looks like. And I can promise you, with these new Auburn facilities that are coming up, and you've got a flight simulator and a barbershop, we will be recruiting well enough. Probably not at the level Alabama is. No one else is either. But we'll recruit well if the product looks as good as I think it has a chance to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Auburn's good. Oh, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, that football facility, by the time they finish it, I'm with Doug. It's going to be over $100 million. I'm very wary, though, of making things too nice, too comfortable, too opulent. You look at Texas A&M, you look at Oregon there, but it's also the people, the culture that you have. Kevin Sumlin had that. He was soft. He was okay going 8-5. Oregon, that's the West Coast. Alabama has a really nice football-only facility, and they win. Okay, Clemson has a really nice one, and they win. Now, I think it's silly. We all know that. We have to put it in relative terms. But if you don't have nice facilities, and I've had coaches tell me, I had one on the staff at Auburn a couple of years ago telling me this. He said, our facilities here at Auburn are 13th or 14th in the SEC.
Yep.
And he said, in our football building, an athletic building at Auburn, we've got, carpet tears and stuff. And Alabama has marble floors. Now, I've been in the football facility, the athletic facility at Auburn, a number of times. It's very nice. I mean, in saying that you've got the worst facilities in the SEC, and they're talking mainly about football, is like saying you've got the oldest Rolls Royce at the Mountain Brook Country Club. I mean, come on. Yeah.
I'll say this, though. I mean, it all goes back to recruiting. That's why you build all the stuff. I mean, you look at what Alabama's done. You look at you're not going to find a school nowadays that wins the national championship that does not have great facilities. That place does not exist. And you don't have to have, to the level of Clemson. But if you're Auburn, because it's all about momentum, the biggest part of the whole facility is when you open it, those first couple of years in recruiting. And then all of a sudden, after 3 years, you got to start adding stuff to it because somebody just built something cool. This is no different than the race to the moon between the United States and the Soviets. It's all perception. Who has the nicest stuff? Who's building it the fastest? Who's doing it better? And everybody else is worried about the other guys. So if you want to get in that fight with Alabama and Clemson, all them, you really do have to go all in. when Nick Saban or Dabo Sweeney or Kirby Smart or any of these guys go into a meeting and they say, hey, I need this to be successful for us to have a chance to beat Alabama, to finally win a national championship here at Georgia. I need this, and this. They don't say, oh, Kirby, why do you need this? How are we going to give you this? They say, okay, coach, you better win. And he says, all right. And they build it. So it's all a race, and you either want to get in it or you don't, because it doesn't matter what I think about it or what you think about it or what anybody. It matters what that 18-year-old five-star defensive end that can rush the passer better than all three of us combined thinks about it. And that kid wants to walk into a palace.
Yeah, he really does. Jimmy Hodge, we were talking with you earlier about you've been all over the country working with Adidas for years and the rebranding of their sports products. And you mentioned the facilities on the West Coast. And again, they're nothing like you would think. You specifically talked about UCLA. And I'm not surprised. But in your opinion, you look around the SEC and the ACC, that footprint, that's where the SEC schools and ACC schools do battle for the recruits. Compare ACC facilities top to bottom on average versus SEC facilities.
Well, I'll sum it up in one sentence. That's why Jimbo Fisher went to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
He was in a years-long battle royal with the Florida State administration over facilities. He warned them repeatedly if they didn't improve, that Florida State could not remain on a level with the SEC schools. And the start of the ACC TV network a year and a half ago has them going in the right direction as far as every school within the next 3 or 4 years having the opportunity to have the type of facilities that you see in the SEC. In other words, Wake Forest is going to have a nice facilities before long when it comes to football. The same, Miami's facilities forever have been subpar.
Oh God.
That's going to change. And you're going to see, Georgia Tech's done some nice things, but once those ACC TV network revenues really start to kick in, because they've taken a hit, like everybody else has because of this virus pandemic year. But you're going to see programs like Virginia, Pitt, Boston College, schools that are in pro sports markets that have kind of taken college athletics as just an afterthought. Well, those programs are going to be spending a lot of money on their athletic facilities. So, no, it's nowhere close to the SEC, but you're going to see that change within the next 3 or 4 years. And the ACC has shown that, if you put your money where your mouth is, you can become a factor in football. I mean, who would have thought this very day 10 years ago that Clemson would be anywhere close to where they are in the pecking order of college football? Nobody, after they gave up 70 points to West Virginia in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to say this, that when the ACC, when Florida State snubbed the SEC back in '92 and chose to go to the ACC, I had an argument with a friend of mine who's a Vanderbilt graduate that, the money for basketball from the ACC is so much better than Florida State coming to the SEC. And I said, you've lost your mind. You're a living brain donor to make a statement like that. Jake Crane, I want to throw this one at you, then come back to Gordon. And Doug's making great points about these facilities, and you did too. It's about the momentum. How new is it? Okay. Because as soon as you open the doors, it's like an option. As it gets closer to expiration date, it becomes more and more worthless. Okay. Jake, and that's what happened with Florida State. They waited until the house was on fire to apply for fire insurance. Okay. And it is a mess. You think Florida State has all this money? They really don't. They're way behind.
Yeah.
Now, they may catch up, but you tell me, Gordon, Mike Norvell, and Gordon, friends down there at Florida State, but I'm going to start with you, Jake, and then go to you, Gordon. Florida State is really in trouble, and I don't see things really getting a whole lot better. But Mike Norvell is a great coach, and he's a great evaluator of talent. But I want your thoughts on that, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State, I mean, it's just like anything. They'd have to make a commitment to it. You know, you look at their facilities, they're not great. Look at Miami. Their facilities really aren't great either. But it seems to be once you make that decision, it's all full go. It's just the ACC, they look at themselves also as the big-time basketball conference because that's really, you know, what North Carolina and Duke have hung their hat on outside of North Carolina's recent success with Matt Brown. But I will say this, I think Mike Norvell's done a really good job in the transfer portal, to be honest with you. He's gotten a couple guys in important spots. Offensively, he's one of the most well-respected coaches around. He's got to get a quarterback in there that's his guy. And once he does, I think they'll be able to score points. But the biggest thing, if you're Florida State or if you're anybody in the ACC, is the gap between Alabama and everybody in the SEC is pretty big. But the gap between Clemson, and I'll even throw Notre Dame in there when Clemson's fully healthy, but the gap between Clemson and everybody else in the ACC is 35,000 times as wide. So that's who you're looking up at right now trying to dethrone, because if you don't win the ACC championship, the way the Final Four is scheduled now, you're not going to get into the Final Four in the ACC. So it's going to be tough. But Mike Norvell, I think he'll make them a lot more competitive. I think they'll actually look like they have some confidence at quarterback, which has been lacking. I mean, the kid they had this year was basically a running back that they made him throw the ball forward a few times. And at the end of the day, that's not what Mike Norvell is or what he wants to do. So if anybody can do it, Mike can, but they won't. I don't think they'll ever be back where they were.
Yeah, 1987 to 2000, before we go to Gordon, Florida State, fourth or better, 14 straight years in the final rankings. Gordon, again, you've got friends at Florida State, and we've watched that program rise, but they waited too late, and now they're playing catch up. And unfortunately for them, this is also, coinciding with the incredible rise of Clemson football. They've played for the national championship 4 or 5 times in the 7 years there's been a playoff.
Well, Jake's right about one thing. They'll never be back to where they are.
Where they were,
and,
yeah.
You look at some school, where they were. I mean, I'll give you an example, Georgetown in basketball. They've never been back to where they were.
No.
But the problem at Florida State is, you're right, they're cheap. I mean, they don't give some of their staff bonuses. I mean, they are cheap. And, paying Willie Taggart off just about kills them.
Yeah.
But they had to do it. They had a bunch of boosters. They don't have big-time boosters that can give them a lot of money. And, you look at Ole Miss, they make fun of Ole Miss before down there. All I got to say is Ole Miss has an indoor practice facility, which is second to none.
Yep.
They have an indoor basketball practice facility. And the thing about Florida State, they put no money into facilities. And they're cheap, and they don't have the money to back them. And that's one of the reasons, like Jimmy said, that Jimbo left. And the bottom line is, it's going to take them a long time.
Yeah, it is going to take them a long time. And look at Miami. Miami is really cheap when it comes to facilities. I'm talking a dump, okay? Virginia Tech, Duke, Wake Forest, NC State, North Carolina, Syracuse. Are you kidding me? I mean, the Carrier Dome, it did not have air conditioning. I think Willis Carrier had something to do with air conditioning. I mean, that's a statement. And that was before they were obviously in the ACC. But guys, Pittsburgh, these schools, they don't put any money in. They don't pay this big money. Florida State right now is trying to win. It's like trying to win the Kentucky Derby with Festus, on Gunsmoke. Festus used to ride a mule. Okay. You can't do it. Florida State's got, again, okay, I know, Jake, you made a great point about the transfer portal. I watched Mike Norvell, Gordon and I did, so did y'all, but right here in Memphis, we watched him. But 4-year run he had at Memphis. Great job of evaluating talent. And there's programs like Boise State, Gonzaga in basketball are examples where they're not going to necessarily get all the top high-profile recruits to visit, but, man, they're great at evaluating and developing players. Gordon, look at it. I mean, and Jimmy, you both made great points. And Doug, you look at it. he's right. 10 years ago, the term Clemsoning, it was like from the movie Kingpin, golly, I just assumed getting Munsoned out here in the middle of nowhere. And Roy Munson goes to Ishmael Borg. He goes, what'd you say? He goes, Munson. You're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels and you just blow it. That was Florida State football. They didn't listen to Jimbo Fisher. He warned them. He begged them. They were too cheap. Now, you tell me, of the top 50 recruits in the state of Florida this year, which of the three schools, the big three?
They got none. They got one top 50 player receiver in the state. Do you know that?
Yeah, Jake, you tell us. Yeah. You're right. What?
Well, I'll give you a great example. Auburn just walked down there with Gus Malzahn barely almost being fired and signed Amari Harvey. And Amari didn't even sign after he was fired and ended up still signing with Auburn. FSU couldn't sign a 4-star that goes to Tallahassee High School.
Yeah.
Right there. That's a really good player. And they took an offensive tackle out of Alabama this year. It's going to take the kid. He's big. His name escapes right now. He went to Gadsden, I believe. He can't move. It's going to take him a while. He's at least 3 to 4 year player. But it showed you they had to take him because he was a big guy and he was decently ranked, but his tape isn't very good. So, again, it's what everybody said. It's 2021. Either you have the juice to recruit or you're going to get left behind. It's really that simple. And if you don't make to me, it shocks me that Leonard Hamilton, their basketball coach, is still there. That's how cheap Florida State is, to be honest with you. I'm shocked he's still there.
You're right.
He's about 75.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. He's been there. He's been there for 63 years.
Yeah.
He was an assistant with Joe B. Hall at Kentucky when they won the national championship.
You mean
he literally he coached against the guys from
78.
Well,
he coached Bill Self at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, no, he was the oldest coach on the roster of the Glory Road team.
Well, Uncle Jed, Buddy Epson went.
Stan Jones down there who helps him coach the team. He's done a great job, and he and I played on an 8th grade team together at Kingsbury in the back in the day. So Stan's a good guy, and he's kind of helped Leonard coach, and they seem to win.
Guys, I'm gonna tell you something. It's really weird. Florida State, their most well-known alumni are 3 people: Lee Corso, Burt Reynolds, and Buddy Epson, Uncle Jed.
Deion Sanders.
Hey, do what?
Deion Sanders.
Oh,
Sanders.
I guess I'm talking about actors. I'm thinking, yeah.
Oh,
but
okay,
no,
okay,
you're right, Deion. And tell you what, I'll never forget the night, the Sugar Bowl in January 2nd, 1989. Florida State beat Auburn, and walking around the French Quarter, pretty bearded up after the game. And people would come up, you had on Auburn stuff, which we did, and say, what time is it? And you start looking at your watch and they go, it's prime time. Oh, God. I just think of that and parachute pants and butt cuts, which was hair parted down the middle. We call it a butt cut or a zipper head. But it was a rough time. But Doug Dean, let me throw this one at you. You're in Birmingham, and you're right there in the middle of Auburn and Alabama. And you got Tennessee coming in there. Georgia tries to get into Alabama, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU. And LSU last year signed 3 of the top 12 players in the state of Georgia. Reek Gilbert is coming back. But what's your thought on facilities and the money that's spent? And of course, you've got UAB there, Andy Kennedy with the basketball, Bill Clark with football. But, I guess it's not the largest city, Birmingham isn't, but the percentages on a per capita basis, it's the highest ratings for college football of any market in America.
Yeah. Do you mean facilities in Birmingham, for example, at UAB?
No, I'm talking about what you see with Auburn and Alabama, and also just the support they get from Birmingham, which really, a lot of the steel industry left in the early 80s, not all of it, but a lot of it, they reinvented themselves as a medical center, just like their cousin up north, Pittsburgh, which is now a ginormous medical center, in spite of losing a lot of the steel. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Well, I think you got, and Jimmy could opine on this from a historical perspective, but in some ways, for good or bad, Coach Bryant making sure that we didn't get an NFL franchise, and he had that much sway back in the day, kind of laid the foundation that we had no choice. We were going to be insanely passionate about Crimson Tide and Auburn football. And so a lot of the people who are affluent that run the state of Alabama, if you know what I mean, they've got resources. They've become passionate about those two schools, and particularly in the case of Alabama. And so it's not surprising that we wouldn't consider it insane when Saban was hired to pay that kind of money for a head coach. It got some headlines, and they've laughed all the way to the bank and the championship hardware. And Auburn it's mystifying to me, and I think mainly a reflection on loss of faith in Malzahn the last 5 to 7 years. That we had hesitance from a lot of our money boosters to step forward and make big bets on facilities, and it's almost as if they were of a mind, hey, show me that we've got a guy that can take us to the mountaintop, and then I'll be proud to endorse that and put my name on it and write the check. So I'm with Jake. I think in one sense, Rob, yes, it might be distasteful in the big picture to spend that kind of opulent money on a sport, but what's the alternative? To be mediocre and have your fan base drop off? And I'll pivot and add to it. I think college football fans and power brokers better start fighting right now, like educators are. Maybe it won't be. We better get football back and game day back as we remember it with the vaccine and everything that's happening. Or I think the brand is going to be hurt for the foreseeable future.
Well, we bet you're absolutely right. And Jimmy, Gordon, Doug Dean, Jake Crane, all of you, everybody listening. If this vaccine, or there are multiple vaccines out there, if they're working and there's confidence that more butts can be in these seats, you're going to start seeing it, I believe. And the football schedules were released this past week. September 4th is, hey, they're expecting that we're playing a full 12. We've learned how to deal with this. We're learning on the fly, but we got a lot more data to go with. And give credit, trainers, managers, directors of equipment operation, coaches, the players, okay? If it was up to a lot of these people, they're defeatists, okay, in other parts of the country. They wanted things to fail. Again, to hell with them. We can make this thing work. And, Jake, you look out here on this recruiting landscape, and if you don't get players in the SEC, you can be 5th in the Western Division and 7th or 8th in the country. But there's a long distance between what Alabama and Georgia are getting and what Auburn and Florida and Tennessee and Arkansas and Ole Miss are getting. And right now, Auburn is one of the lowest rated recruiting classes in the league. They're not going to rank the transfer portal players, but look, let's do this on our we're going to do a podcast this week, Jake. I'd like to do it Wednesday or Thursday. And let's take a look at who did. Obviously, we know about the recruiting classes, but let's do it where we also do one on what you did with the transfer portal. Is that enough time, or is it going to be more, several days or weeks before you can make a lot of sense about what happens with the portal? At least we could take a snapshot and let people know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you have to sign if you're in the portal on that signing day. That's just for high school kids. Yeah. So, the portal kids can sign whenever. It's like grad transfers, as long as it's before a certain date, it can really happen. And sometimes the dates get strung out because some coaches are like, listen, we need to tackle so bad, we'll wait until the summer. Welcome to the world of junior college recruiting. Yeah. That's the biggest question for most of them is when can the guys get in? Sometimes that matters more between who's the better player, as crazy as that sounds. But, I mean, yeah, it's always great to take a snapshot. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just good to get information out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, guys, we have run a little bit over time right now. I want to say thanks to all of our sponsors here on Sidelines.live Sunday afternoon wrap-up show. Our producer, my wife, Audrey-Ann Brown here, coming over here at the Cherry Farm. And I tell you what, Doug, it's as the sun slowly sets in the western sky on Crowley's Ridge, looking out toward the ridge here from the park in Arkansas from the Cherry Farm. All flags are at half-mast. Consumption of heat lamp food, sausage, gravy, biscuits with eggs at 5:30 in the morning with a bottle of Jolt Cola and excessive amounts of coffee. As all hunters know, that's the diet of a hunter. But hey, look, we're already getting ready for the youth hunt next weekend. But Jimmy Hodge, as always, thank you so much. Gordon Ford, Mitch Davis of the MitchDavisShow.com on with us earlier. Doug Dean of the AU Daily Dose. good gosh, unbelievable source of information. Jake Crane, host of the J-Boy podcast. I'm Gordon Ford, Mr. Ole Miss Rebel. You and Lonnie Lewis Smith, pride of Macomb, Mississippi, can fight that one out. But we covered a lot today. Great show. I want to thank all of y'all for taking time on your Sunday afternoon to be with us. And Jake, tell people your big plans, what all's going on, and how they can follow you on the J-Boy podcast. And again, this is awesome. And Nigel, our webmaster, we'll be hitting you up here in just a few minutes. And if you missed this show live, check it out on the website tonight on sidelines.live. But Jake, let her rip. Jake, are you there? Oops. Okay. We may have lost Jake Crane, but anyway, thanks to everybody though for this Sunday afternoon wrap-up show on sidelines.live. And we'll be back with you again. Look for a podcast up Tuesday evening. Of course, National Signing Day. The final part of it is on Wednesday. But again, have a great day, everybody. And thanks so much for listening. We're out of here. Okay. Hey, guys. Thank y'all. Hey, look, man, that was a blast. Thank y'all so much. My battery was going out. I'll give y'all all a holler and here shortly, but let me get this stuff put up on the website. Thanks. Oops. Okay. Oh, forgot to say, but I did get the Twitter thing. I'm starting to think. Okay. @ sidelines_live. So someone types that in, they can start following us.